The internet was a wildfire, and I'd just thrown gasoline on it. My fingers trembled as I typed the words that would haunt me. Leo Carter is the worst person I've ever known. Posted to thousands of followers. The post exploded before I could blink, likes and retweets spiraling into a digital storm I couldn't control. Ezra Kane sat frozen in his San Francisco apartment, staring at the laptop screen, the glow casting shadows across his face. The words he'd typed in a fit of rage now felt like a noose tightening around his heart. He and Leo had fought before, God. They'd had screaming matches that rattled the windows. But this was different. This was public. This was permanent. And it was a lie. Ezra, 27, was a graphic designer with a sharp tongue and a knack for turning emotions into art. His life was a canvas of bold strokes. Vibrant, chaotic, unapologetic. Leo, 29, was his opposite. A soft-spoken nurse with a steady hand and a heart that seemed to carry the weight of everyone he met. They'd been together for 2 years. Their love a fragile dance between Ezra's fire and Leo's calm. But last night, that dance had shattered. The fight started over something small. Ezra's late nights at the studio, Leo's endless shifts at the hospital. It spiraled into accusations, old wounds ripped open. Ezra, raw and reckless, had stormed out, slamming the door on their shared apartment in the Mission District. He'd spent the night on a friend's couch, drowning his anger in whiskey and spite. By morning, his hurt had morphed into something uglier. He opened his social media, typed the post, and hit send without a second thought. Now the comments were pouring in. What did he do? Spill the tea. Ezra, you deserve better. Strangers dissected his life, unaware of the truth. Leo wasn't the worst. He was the best. Ezra's chest tightened as he scrolled through the venom he'd unleashed. He wanted to delete it, to claw the words back. But the internet didn't forgive. It didn't forget. His phone buzzed. A text from his best friend. Maya. Ezra, what the hell? You okay? He ignored it. Another buzz. Call me. Now. He tossed the phone across the room, where it landed on a pile of unwashed clothes. He didn't want to talk. He didn't want to explain. He just wanted to rewind the clock. Ezra paced the apartment, the walls closing in. Their place was a patchwork of their lives. Leo's medical books stacked neatly on the shelf. Ezra's sketches pinned haphazardly to the walls. A photo of them at Golden Gate Park, laughing under a rare sunny sky, mocked him from the fridge. He couldn't look at it. He grabbed his jacket and headed out, the city's fog wrapping around him like a shroud. San Francisco was alive, its streets humming with cable cars and the chatter of tourists. Ezra walked aimlessly, the weight of his mistake pressing harder with every step. He ended up at the cafe where he and Leo had their first date, a cozy spot called The Brew with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted coffee. He sat at their usual table, staring at the empty seat across from him. Ezra, a familiar voice snapped him out of his daze. It was Jamie, a mutual friend who worked at the cafe. Their short locks bounced as they leaned over, concern etched on their face. You look like hell. What's going on? Ezra forced a smile, but it cracked. Just messed up. Big time. Jamie slid into the seat across from him. Want to talk about it? He didn't, but the words spilled out anyway. He told Jamie about the fight, the post, the way he'd let his anger take the wheel. Jamie listened, their eyes softening with every word. You love him, don't you? Jamie asked quietly. Ezra's throat closed up. He nodded, unable to speak. Love wasn't the problem. It was everything else. The fear, the pride, the way he pushed Leo away when all he wanted was to pull him closer. Go talk to him, Jamie urged, before this gets worse. Ezra knew they were right, but the thought of facing Leo made his stomach churn. What could he say? Sorry I called you the worst person ever to thousands of people? It sounded pathetic even in his head. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something, instinct maybe, made him pick up. Hello. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming. Ezra Kane. The voice was clipped, professional. This is Dr. Patel from San Francisco General. You're listed as Leo Carter's emergency contact. The world tilted. Ezra gripped the table, his knuckles white. What happened? Is he okay? He's stable, but he's been in an accident. We need you to come to the ER. Ezra didn't hear the rest. His heart was a drum in his chest, drowning out everything else. He grabbed his keys and ran, the city blurring past him as he raced toward the hospital. The post, the fight, the stupid things he'd said. It all faded. All that mattered was Leo. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of angry bees, each flicker stabbing at Ezra's nerves. He pushed through the ER doors, the smell of antiseptic and fear hitting him like a wave. His sneakers squeaked on the polished floor as he scanned the waiting room, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack his ribs. "Ezra Kane," he gasped at the reception desk. "I'm here for Leo Carter." The nurse, a woman with tired eyes and a clipboard, nodded. "He's in room 12. Follow the signs." Ezra didn't wait for more. He half ran through the maze of corridors, dodging gurneys and doctors, his mind a chaotic loop of Leo, Leo, Leo. He hadn't prayed since he was a kid, but now he was bargaining with anyone who'd listen. God, the universe, whatever. Just let him be okay. Room 12 was quiet, the curtain half drawn. Ezra stopped short, his breath catching. Leo lay on the hospital bed, his face bruised, a bandage wrapped around his forehead. His eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Machines beeped softly, their screens glowing with numbers Ezra didn't understand. Leo looked smaller than he ever had, fragile in a way that made Ezra's heart ache. "Leo," he whispered, stepping closer. His voice broke, and he clamped a hand over his mouth to stifle a sob. This was his fault. Not the accident, God, he hoped not. But the distance between them, the words he couldn't take back. A doctor appeared, her white coat crisp despite the late hour. "You're Ezra?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. He nodded, unable to look away from Leo. "What happened?" "Car accident," she said. "He was hit by a drunk driver while crossing the street. Concussion, some bruising, a fractured wrist. He's lucky, it could have been worse." Ezra's knees buckled, but he caught himself on the edge of the bed. "Lucky," he echoed, the word bitter on his tongue. Can I stay with him?" "Of course. He's been asking for you." The words hit like a punch. Leo, even after everything, wanted him here. Ezra pulled a chair close to the bed, his hands shaking as he reached for Leo's. His skin was warm, alive, and Ezra clung to that like a lifeline. He didn't know how long he sat there, watching Leo's chest rise and fall, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the way his lashes fanned against his cheeks. The post was still out there, festering in the digital ether, but it felt distant now, irrelevant. All that mattered was this moment, this man. Leo stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Ezra?" His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "I'm here," Ezra said, his throat tight. "I'm right here." Leo's gaze found him, cloudy with pain but unmistakably his. "You came." "Of course I did." Ezra's voice cracked. "Leo, I'm so sorry. The post, the fight, everything. I didn't mean it." Leo's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "You're an idiot." Ezra laughed, a broken, desperate sound. "Yeah, the worst." They sat in silence, the weight of the past 24 hours pressing down. Ezra wanted to say more, to pour out every regret, but the words stuck. Instead, he held Leo's hand tighter, as if letting go would break something irreparable. A nurse came in to check Leo's vitals, and Ezra stepped back, his mind racing. He needed to fix this, not just the post, but them. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real, and he'd almost thrown it away. As the nurse left, Ezra's phone buzzed again. Another notification, another comment on his post. He pulled it out, ready to delete the whole damn thing, but froze when he saw the latest message. "Hope you're okay, Ezra. Saw the news about Leo. Sending love." His stomach dropped. The news? How did anyone know? He opened the app, scrolling frantically. Someone had posted a photo of the accident. A mangled car, police lights, and Leo's name mentioned in the caption. The internet was relentless, connecting dots Ezra hadn't even seen yet. He turned off his phone and shoved it in his pocket. He didn't care about the likes, the retweets, the chaos he'd started. He cared about the man in front of him, the one who'd seen him at his worst and still asked for him. "Leo," he said softly, sitting back down. "I'm gonna make this right. I swear." Leo's eyes met his, steady despite the pain. "Just don't leave," he murmured. Ezra's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the same breath. "Never," he promised. The hospital room was a cocoon of quiet, broken only by the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Ezra sat hunched in the chair beside Leo's bed, his thumb tracing circles on Leo's hand. The weight of his mistake clung to him like damp clothes, heavy and suffocating. He promised to make things right, but where did he even start? Leo's eyes were closed again, his breathing steady as he drifted in and out of sleep. Ezra watched him, memorizing every detail. The faint scar above his eyebrow from a childhood fall, the way his lips parted slightly with each exhale. He'd always thought Leo was unbreakable, a pillar of calm in his stormy life. Seeing him like this, bruised and bandaged, made Ezra feel like he'd failed him long before the post. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a relentless reminder of the world outside. He ignored it, but the silence in the room gave his thoughts too much space to spiral. The post was still out there, a digital scar that wouldn't heal on its own. He needed to delete it to issue some kind of apology, but the thought of facing the internet's judgment made his skin crawl. A soft knock pulled him from his thoughts. Maya, his best friend, stood in the doorway, her braids pulled back and her eyes wide with worry. "Ezra," she whispered, stepping inside. "I came as soon as I heard." "How'd you know?" he asked, his voice low to avoid waking Leo. "It's all over X," she said, wincing. "Someone saw the accident, connected it to your post. People are talking." Ezra's stomach twisted. "What are they saying?" Maya hesitated, then pulled out her phone and showed him. Comments ranged from sympathetic, prayers for Leo, to vicious, Ezra's trash for airing this online. Some speculated about the fight, others about Leo's condition. It was a feeding frenzy, and Ezra had chummed the waters. "I didn't mean for this," he said, his voice barely audible. "I was just angry." Maya sat on the arm of his chair, her hand on his shoulder. "I know, but you've got to fix it. For Leo. For you." Ezra nodded, but the how of it felt impossible. He wasn't just fighting the internet. He was fighting himself, his impulsiveness, his need to lash out when he felt cornered. He'd always been like this, quick to burn bridges before anyone could cross them. Leo was the only one who'd ever stayed, who'd seen through the flames to the person underneath. "I'll delete it," he said finally, "and I'll post something else. Something true." Maya squeezed his shoulder. "Good, but talk to him first. He deserves that." Ezra glanced at Leo, still asleep, and felt a pang of guilt so sharp it stole his breath. Maya was right. Leo deserved more than a public apology. He deserved the truth, raw and unfiltered. As Maya left, promising to bring coffee later, Leo stirred again. His eyes opened, clearer this time, and locked onto Ezra's. "You're still here," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Told you I wouldn't leave," Ezra replied, forcing a smile of his own. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a car," Leo said dryly, then winced as he shifted. "What's going on out there?" "I heard Maya." Ezra hesitated, then decided to be honest. "The post, it's everywhere. People know about the accident. They're talking." Leo's face tightened, but he didn't pull his hand away. "What are they saying?" "That I'm an asshole," Ezra said bluntly. "And they're not wrong." Leo's laugh was weak but genuine. "You're not an asshole. You're just you." Ezra's chest ached. "I'm sorry, Leo. I shouldn't have posted that. I shouldn't have said any of it." Leo's gaze softened. "Why did you?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Ezra wanted to deflect, to make a joke, but Leo's eyes held him in place. "I was scared," he admitted finally. "You're so good, and I'm a mess. I thought if I pushed you away first, it wouldn't hurt as much when you left." Leo's fingers tightened around his. "I'm not leaving, Ezra. Not unless you make me." The words were a lifeline, and Ezra clung to them. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against Leo's hand, letting the tears he'd been holding back finally fall. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Maybe not," Leo said, his voice teasing but warm. "But you've got me." They sat like that for a long time, the hospital room fading into the background. Ezra knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There was still the post, the fallout, the work of rebuilding trust. But for the first time in days, he felt like they could do it. Together. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, casting stripes across Leo's bed. Ezra hadn't slept, his body aching from the stiff chair but unwilling to move. Leo was awake now, sipping water through a straw, his wrist brace making his movements clumsy. The sight of him, alive and fighting, was both a relief and a reminder of how close Ezra had come to losing him. "We need to talk about the post," Leo said, his voice stronger but still laced with pain. "It's not just gonna go away." Ezra nodded, his throat tight. "I know. I'm gonna delete it, and I'll post an apology. Something real." Leo studied him, his brown eyes searching. "What are you gonna say?" Ezra hadn't thought that far. He'd been so focused on Leo, on the accident, that the words felt out of reach. "The truth," he said finally. "That I was wrong. That you're everything." Leo's lips curved into a small smile. "You're getting soft on me, Kane." "Shut up," Ezra said, but he was smiling too. It was the first real moment of lightness between them since the fight, fragile but precious. He pulled out his phone, ignoring the flood of notifications, and opened the app. His fingers hovered over the screen, the weight of thousands of eyes pressing down on him. He typed slowly, each word a step toward redemption. I messed up. I called someone I love the worst person ever, and I was wrong. Leo Carter is kind, strong, and better than I'll ever be. I'm sorry for the pain I caused him, and I'm working to make it right. Please respect our privacy as he recovers. He showed it to Leo, who read it silently, then nodded. It's a start. Ezra hit post, then deleted the original. The internet would never fully forget, but this was something. A step. He set the phone face down, determined to focus on the man in front of him. The day passed in a blur of doctors' visits and small conversations. Leo's concussion was mild, they said, but he'd need rest and physical therapy for his wrist. Ezra listened, taking mental notes, already planning how he'd help. He'd never been good at caregiving. Leo was the nurse, not him, but he'd learn. For Leo, he'd learn anything. By afternoon, visitors started trickling in. Leo's sister, Amara, arrived first, her protective energy filling the room. She hugged Leo tightly, then turned to Ezra with a look that could have cut glass. You've got some explaining to do, she said. I know, Ezra replied, meeting her gaze. I'm trying. Amara softened slightly but didn't let him off the hook. He's my baby brother. Don't hurt him again. Ezra nodded, the weight of her words settling deep. He wouldn't. Not if he could help it. Jamie stopped by next, bringing coffee and pastries from the brew. They didn't mention the post, just sat with Leo, cracking jokes to make him laugh. Ezra watched, grateful for the people who loved Leo almost as much as he did. Almost. As evening fell, Leo grew quiet, his energy fading. Ezra helped him adjust the pillows, their hands brushing in a way that felt like a promise. You don't have to stay, Leo said, but his eyes said otherwise. I want to, Ezra replied, unless you're sick of me. Never, Leo said, echoing Ezra's promise from the night before. They talked late into the night, about the fight, about the fears they'd both buried. Ezra admitted how much he hated feeling like he wasn't enough for Leo, how his insecurity had fueled the post. Leo confessed he'd been pulling away too, overwhelmed by work and afraid to ask for more from Ezra. We're a mess, Ezra said, but there was no venom in it, just truth. Yeah, Leo agreed, but we're our mess. Ezra laughed, and for the first time in days it didn't hurt. They weren't fixed, not yet, but they were talking, and that was enough for now. Leo was discharged the next day, with strict instructions to rest and avoid screens. Ezra drove him home, the silence in the car heavy but not uncomfortable. San Francisco's hills rolled by, the city's beauty a stark contrast to the chaos in Ezra's head. He kept glancing at Leo, who stared out the window, his bandaged wrist resting in his lap. Their apartment felt different when they walked in, like a place they'd outgrown but weren't ready to leave. Ezra helped Leo to the couch, fussing over pillows until Leo swatted him away with a tired grin. I'm not made of glass, Ezra. I know, Ezra said, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Not yet. He made tea, Leo's favorite, chamomile with a hint of honey, and sat beside him, their knees touching. The post's fallout was still rippling online, but Ezra had muted notifications. The real work was here, in this room, with the man he'd almost lost. We need to set some ground rules, Leo said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. No more airing our fights online. Ever. Ezra nodded, shame burning his cheeks. I know. I'm done with that. And we talk, Leo continued, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Deal, Ezra said, his voice thick. What else? Leo hesitated, then reached for Ezra's hand. We don't give up. Not on each other. Ezra's eyes stung. He squeezed Leo's hand, careful of the brace. Not a chance. They spent the day rebuilding piece by piece. Ezra cooked dinner, burning the chicken slightly, but Leo ate it anyway, teasing him mercilessly. They watched a movie, Leo's head on Ezra's shoulder, the familiar weight grounding him. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The next morning, Ezra woke to a flood of messages. His apology post had gone viral, but not in the way he'd expected. People were sharing stories of their own mistakes, their own apologies, their own loves. Strangers sent messages of support, some even thanking him for being honest. It was overwhelming, humbling, and Ezra didn't know how to feel about it. He showed Leo, who read through the comments with a thoughtful expression. You turned it around, he said finally. That's something. I don't care about them, Ezra said, surprising himself with the truth of it. I care about you. Leo's smile was small but real. I know. Over the next few days, they settled into a new rhythm. Ezra took time off work, sketching in the apartment while Leo rested. He drew Leo as he was now, bruised but unbroken, his strength shining through in the quiet moments. Each sketch was an apology, a love letter, a promise. But the world outside wouldn't stay quiet. A local news outlet picked up the story, framing it as a cautionary tale about social media and relationships. Ezra's name was everywhere, and not all of it was kind. Some called him toxic, others defended him. He tried to ignore it, but the noise was relentless. One night, as they lay in bed, Leo broke the silence. You're not toxic, he said, his voice firm. You're human, and you're mine. Ezra turned to him, their faces inches apart in the dark. How do you do that? He asked. How do you see the good in me when I keep screwing up? Because I love you, Leo said simply. And love isn't about being perfect. It's about staying. Ezra kissed him then, soft and slow, pouring everything he couldn't say into the touch. It was a beginning, not an end. A step toward healing the wounds they'd both carried too long. Weeks passed, and Leo's bruises faded, though the wrist brace stayed. Ezra threw himself into caring for him, learning to cook meals that didn't end in smoke alarms, driving Leo to physical therapy, and sketching late into the night when his thoughts grew too loud. Their apartment became a sanctuary, a place where they could shut out the world and focus on each other. But the internet didn't forget. Ezra's apology post had sparked a larger conversation, and he was invited to speak on a local podcast about social media and accountability. He hesitated, unsure if he wanted to reopen the wound, but Leo encouraged him. You've got something to say, he said, and people are listening. Ezra agreed, nervous but determined. The podcast was raw, unfiltered. He talked about the fight, the post, the accident, leaving out the intimate details but sharing the lesson. That love was worth more than pride, that words could wound as deeply as any weapon. The hosts were kind, the listeners responsive, and for the first time, Ezra felt like his mistake might have a purpose. Back home, Leo was waiting with takeout from their favorite Thai place. How'd it go? He asked, setting out plates. Better than I thought, Ezra admitted. Felt good to be honest. Leo nodded, his eyes warm. You're good at that when you try. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Ezra realized how much he'd missed this. Missed them. The fight, the post, the accident. They'd stripped away the pretense, leaving only what mattered. But healing wasn't linear. Some days, Ezra caught Leo staring out the window, his expression distant. When he asked, Leo admitted the accident had shaken him more than he let on. I keep thinking about how fast it happened, he said one night, his voice low. 1 second I was crossing the street, the next I was on the ground. Ezra held him, his own guilt flaring. I should have been there. You couldn't have known, Leo said, but the words didn't erase the ache. They started therapy, both together and separately. Ezra learned to name his fears, to recognize the patterns that led to his outbursts. Leo worked through the trauma of the accident, the betrayal of the post. It was hard, messy work, but they showed up for it, for each other. One evening, Ezra pulled out his sketchbook and showed Leo a new drawing. A portrait of them at the cafe, hands intertwined, the city alive around them. This is how I see us, he said. Not perfect, but together. Leo's eyes softened. It's beautiful, he said, and kissed him. The city kept moving, its rhythm unchanging, but Ezra and Leo found their own pace. They went back to the brew, reclaiming their spot. They walked through Golden Gate Park, laughing like they used to, and slowly the wounds began to heal. Not gone, but part of their story. Spring arrived in San Francisco, the fog giving way to clear skies. Ezra and Leo stood on the roof of their apartment building, the city sprawling below them, a tapestry of lights and dreams. It was their anniversary, 2 years since that first date at the brew, 3 months since the accident that had nearly broken them. Ezra held Leo's hand, the wrist brace gone now, replaced by a faint scar. They'd come far, but the journey wasn't over. The internet had moved on, chasing new scandals, but the lessons lingered. Ezra had learned to pause, to think before he acted. Leo had learned to lean on Ezra, to trust him with his fears. I was thinking, Ezra said, his voice soft against the evening breeze. We should take a trip, somewhere quiet, just us. Leo raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in his eyes. You? Quiet? I'll believe it when I see it. Ezra laughed, pulling Leo close. I'm serious. Maybe Mendocino, or Big Sur. Somewhere we can just be. Leo nodded, his head resting against Ezra's shoulder. I'd like that. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the city humming below. Ezra thought about the post, the accident, the long nights in the hospital. He thought about the fights they'd had and the ones they'd avoided since. Love wasn't a straight line. It was a spiral circling back to the same truths, each loop a chance to grow. I'm glad you didn't give up on me, Ezra said, his voice barely above a whisper. Leo turned to him, his eyes bright. I'm glad you didn't give up on us. They kissed, slow and sure, the kind of kiss that held promises and apologies and everything in between. The world could judge, could comment, could try to tear them apart, but they'd built something stronger, something real. As they pulled back, Ezra felt a weight lift, not gone but lighter. He looked out at the city, at the life they'd carved out together, and knew they'd be okay. Not perfect, not flawless, but okay. And that was enough. They went back downstairs, hand in hand, ready for whatever came next. The story wasn't over, it never really was, but this chapter felt like a beginning. A chance to write something new together,